You are Locked On Coogs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Kansas has a lot more than that. Not like some rosters out there that completely turn over. Has the integration taken time? How's that worked in terms of pulling guys in?
Yes, it has taken some time. And Bill Self is typically very hard to crack the lineup for. And we've seen that right now. AJ Storr's coming off a double-digit point game against TCU. Before that, it had been really getting nothing from AJ Storr, who was an All-Big Ten second-team performer from a year before. So the question is if he can build on that coming into the Houston game. Like Rylan Griffin has shown some good flashes, but hasn't really been able to consistently crack into Bill Self's circle of trust, so to speak. It takes time with Bill Self, and Zeke Mayo's kind of been the one guy who hit the ground running right away and has lasted the whole way through with transfer coming in who has been able to find that trust with Bill Self. Like I said, with Shaquille Moore, he's found it now, but it took him till January to do so. With Storr and Griffin, it's been kind of yo-yoing in back and forth. So it has not been smooth sailing with the transfer portal, I would say, so far for Bill Self.
Well, as we, I guess, transition to the third segment, we do need to talk about this game in particular. And I guess I'll start with you because I'm already asking questions about Kansas. And I think there's a lot of ways this game goes either way. FanDuel, as of recording of this episode, FanDuel does not have the line out, but KenPom's got a 1-point game, right? I mean, that is a true toss-up in any way that KenPom could do it. I want to know what you think if Kansas were to win this game, if Kansas is victorious come Saturday night, what will they have done right? What's something they've got to do to win the game?
I mean, this doesn't sound like a statistical thing, but it's like they have to play tough. When I think of Houston basketball, when I think of Kelvin Sampson basketball, I think of toughness. And that can come in a lot of different forms, right? That can come in rebounding. That can be coming, winning 50-50 balls. That can come in being the first on the floor. That can come in finishing through contact. There's a lot of different stuff that can come through. Kansas has to play tough. And going back to what I said earlier about how the season has gone, they've had some games where they haven't played with that full energy at the beginning of the game. I think if you're a tough team, you come out and play with energy in this game against Houston. You don't get walloped in the mouth right away. I think that would be something that I would look to. Beyond that, you have to take care of the basketball. I mean, Houston forces turnovers at such a good rate. You can, I think, live with those dead ball turnovers. You can't have the live ball turnovers that are going to lead to easy points for Houston because these are two really good defenses. And I'll be very interested to see how Houston, Kansas typically has struggled against teams who can space them out and shoot threes with this iteration of the team. But I am curious from a matchup perspective because they do play kind of three smaller guards. The way Kansas has been playing lately has been three smaller guards around two big men. So, I mean, stylistically, there's some similarities there that I wonder if KU will be able to match up okay there, and that this will be a lower scoring game, and it could come down to the margins, and the margins are the toughness. The margins are, taking care of the basketball, not turning it over, maximizing those possessions so you can get shots up. Flip side, Houston wins this one if what?
I think they got to win the turnover battle. It's funny. I didn't mean to. We didn't converse beforehand. I know we're going to do the exact similar thing. But this is one of the few teams, as far as like top end teams that Houston will play, that they might actually have a size advantage in the guard room, right? DeJuan Harris is 6'2", Miles Uzan 6'4", Shaquille Moore is listed at 6'1". I got him right here. LJ Cryer is listed at 6'2", and then Zeke Mayo is listed at 6'4", and Emmanuel Sharp, who is supposed to start. He rolled his ankle in practice on Tuesday, sat out Wednesday's game. I think more precautionary. Like Kelvin Sampson said after the game, he didn't know till warm-ups he wasn't going to play. He's 6'3". The guy that came in and started for him, Terrence Armstrong, was 6'5" and change. I say to say that Houston actually has some size there, and if they can use that length to force the issue here. The issue is that it feels like Houston's going to have to force the issue with turnovers. A very Bill Self aspect of this team is that they don't commit turnovers that aren't like unforced turnovers or like top 20 in the country. It looks like to me as I'm reading the stats here on KenPom, and that's indicative, I think, of a team that you're going to have to make them make mistakes, right? And so Houston's going to have to do those kinds of things now against Utah, who we can all kick out of the Big 12 at this point, I think. They did. Utah committed 24 turnovers and made 13 field goals. That's insane, right? Against UCF, it was just 13 turnovers, and we saw how close that game was. And I don't mean to knock UCF a whole lot. I think Kansas has better basketball players than UCF, regardless of how they play, right? And so that's going to be a big deal is forcing the turnovers with the backcourt guys. In the front court, I think it's controlling the pace. Not letting Hunter Dickinson be comfortable and really kind of making him play, like you mentioned, kind of a Houston style of basketball, because as you've alluded to, that's not really his comfort zone. He's not the guy who's going to beat you up physically. He's a little more finesse to his game. Houston's got some junkyard dog to him, right? And so I think that's what Houston have to do in this one. Obviously, those could both lead to fouls and fouling out and all kinds of problems. But I think that's how this would go if Houston wins. And now I'm going to put you in a spot a little bit, Derek. Make your prediction. You've been very honest about Kansas all year long. What do you think's happening Saturday?
So I'm actually picking Houston in this one. I think they have the toughness factor. I think Kansas has figured out the defense as the season has gone on, but I do have questions about the offense. And when you're playing the number one defense in the country and you're coming off a game where you just had 17 turnovers against TCU, I don't know that is a great recipe for beating this really good Houston team. So there is a part of me that thinks Kansas wins the game just because it'll be close and Allen Fieldhouse magic and stuff like that. But right now I would be picking Houston to pull this upset on the, well, I guess not an upset, but feels weird not saying a team coming in Allen Fieldhouse should be an upset, but I think it'll be a good game though, regardless. At least it'll be a close game. I don't know how good it'll be. It might be one of those ugly, like the Ken Palm lineup there. If you're watching on YouTube, 64-63 might be kind of an ugly game, but I think it'll be a close one.
Well, and I have to stress that if you broke 60, as the Ken Palm prediction says, that hasn't happened a whole lot to Houston this year. And Houston is coming off a few wins in a row, but they're really, in all of those wins, are keeping teams down in the low 50s, with the exception of UCF. So, I don't mean to sound like a total homer. I'm going to pick Houston too, I think. And I think the deal is like you're saying, it's like Houston's a little bit more prepared for the moment, I think, than they might have been a year ago. First year in the Big 12, got a bunch of returners. And then for what it's worth, Milos came to Houston from Oklahoma. So he's been in the Big 12, played in Fog before. I kind of feel like it is going to be maybe a 2-possession game. So maybe it's more like 4 than the 1 point Ken Palm is saying. I don't mean to make it not close. I think Houston's got a little bit of an edge in this one. And like you're saying, Kansas kind of, to me, feels like a team that's still figuring themselves out and might be better in late February or March than they are right now. But it's certainly not the teams. It doesn't feel like the same kind of team in mid-January that they've won titles with in the past, right? So I kind of am playing both of that and feeling like Houston should be pretty comfortable in this one. Obviously, it is a single game. It is a game on the road, and all kinds of crazy things can happen. Obviously, both these schools also have a lot of basketball news these days. Where are people finding you and all the basketball stuff you got going? Kansas Jayhawks basketball is a national appeal, right?
That's right. Locked On Jayhawks, anywhere you get your podcast, and on YouTube as well. And you can give me a follow at D Johnson Radio on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it.
Whatever you want to call it. About the same thing. Pains512 on Twitter and X and all that kind of stuff. I live tweet throughout the game and then go live afterwards. Obviously, folks over at Locked On Jayhawks, you got post-game stuff planned and all that kind of stuff going on as well. So make sure you subscribe to both channels. Hit the bell to know when we go live. Game tips off at 5:30 Central Time. It's Kansas Central Time. So yeah. Yes. It's 5:30 local time as well for all folks trying to get in and watch this one. Should be a fun Big 12 matchup. Houston's still looking for a quad 1 win, actually. So that's kind of a big deal here. They had to, but West Virginia has fallen out of the top 30 and UCF has fallen out of the top. Like they fell out after the fact. But anyway, this has been a crossover edition of Locked On Coogs and Locked On Jayhawks. Thank you so much for making this your first, second, third, whatever listen of the day it is for you at this point, depending on what channel you're on. Locked On Coogs and Locked On Jayhawks are both proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network and recommend Locked On College Basketball for your next listen to go keep the hoops talk going. Thanks again, and go Coogs, folks. Go Coogs.